What up, everybody? We're on our 75th episode.
Episode 75 in Spanish for all our Spanish folk. And we got
Rosetta Stone.
We got Tony Hsieh up in the house, guys.
Tony Hsieh.
Lovely recommendation from one of our previous guests, Jen Toller. If you guys have not checked out her video, we're going to go ahead and link it up. Where?
The description. No, description below, bro. You pointed up.
No,
like
the little annotation button that pops up.
Do you do that?
Yeah, do that, bro.
If you're looking at the screen, top right.
Yes.
So it would be probably right here. Boop,
Real,
boop, boop.
real quick, for those who don't know, I'm going to pull up Tony Hsieh's bio, even though the man who needs no introduction will be introduced.
And before you do that, can you like, subscribe, and leave a comment on the video? Because we'd love that.
I'm not going to keep asking, but I will. Tony Hsieh is an American internet entrepreneur and venture capitalist. He is the CEO of an online shoe store and clothing company, Zappos. Prior to joining Zappos, Hsieh co-founded the internet advertising network LinkExchange, which he which he sold to Microsoft in 1998 for $265 million.
That's a lot.
This is about to be a super dope episode. Do you have any questions that you want to ask Tony?
No, I'm probably going to be quiet the whole episode.
Well, I got a lot of questions. Without further ado, we present to you guys episode 75 of the Morning Dinner Podcast.
Every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen, in the goddamn refrigerator.
I sure am hungry.
Tony Hsieh, what's going on, man?
How's it going? This is a very interesting recording studio you have here.
Can you just kind of give us a brief elevator pitch on who you are?
Yeah, so I live at Ferguson's, and so do Jen and Beverly. So you can learn more about Ferguson's at fergusonsdowntown.com. There's 30 Airstreams and tiny houses. I think something like 35 residents, 15 dogs, a sloth, an alpaca, and 5 cats. And we're pretty excited. There's the residential side that we've all been living in, and then Jen's been working on the front side of it, which is gonna have a couple restaurants, a coffee shop, and all these local retailers there. And so all of that is within the context of a larger downtown Vegas effort to help revitalize the city. And Zappos is also downtown, which I'm also involved with. So I know I've got my I'm kind of involved in a bunch of different things, but all of it is really centered on this idea of helping people find their entrepreneurial and creative spirit, and helping build community.
So are you kind of involved with also kind of the what Kelly Bennett works on with the workshop downtown?
Indirectly, I think that's mostly Jen's been working with her more directly on it. And so I guess for slightly broader context, part of what I'm involved in is Downtown Project, which is investing in different small businesses like restaurants and bars and coffee shops and so on. And then our philosophy is pretty different from most other city revitalization projects. Like, there isn't really this master plan where we say, oh, we need to have one of these and one of these and one of these. It's more about supporting the entrepreneurs and their passions. And so that's kind of how Jen here, she's super passionate about certain things. And then I think you were probably the one that originally found Kelly somehow. She's not at the microphone, but she said, yeah.
Now, you talk about it, investing in all these local businesses downtown so they can flourish, and you're all about supporting that entrepreneurial spirit and hustle. How do you find businesses to support? Is there like a certain requirement that a certain person or business needs to meet before you decide you want to get personally invested into it?
Yeah, I mean, we were doing a lot more exploration in the early days of Downtown Project, or DTP, and so the criteria is, we've definitely had people come and say, oh, I've seen this bar or concept or chain in other cities, and we want to do the same thing here. And we actually say no to those because we want to have our own identity in terms of what's happening in downtown Vegas. And so being owner operated is super important to us. And kind of along those same lines, like first, unique, or best is a criteria that we use. We also look for people that care about other entrepreneurs in the community in general beyond just so even if they're, say, the best, I don't know, entrepreneur or business owner in the world, if they don't have a bias to be helpful to other entrepreneurs, that's something that we're not that interested in. And then we also have kind of the more general criteria. If we're looking for, in the case of small businesses, places that will result in more collisions, and by collisions meaning people serendipitously running into each other. And so I think for most people, the last time that happened was maybe in college, on a college campus, where it's just normal to run into people. And part of what we're trying to collectively do in downtown Vegas is have these places and this culture where it's normal to run into people as you're walking about town. So collisions is a big part of it. Co-learning, meaning that, for example, say there's a small business that's really good at PR and another one that's good at IT stuff. And if they can help each other out, then that helps everyone out. And so this idea of the community helping each other out. So there's collisions, co-learning, and then connectedness, meaning the number and depth of relationships. So those are kind of what I would refer to as the 3 C's that we try to focus on, and then combined with diversity and density. And so, all this stuff is happening in a relatively small space within downtown Vegas. Like the goal is everything is walkable. And then diversity, anytime there's a new project, the thought process is this something that will help make downtown Vegas more diverse? Will it help attract a different crowd? And so that's something that we look at. So if you combine all those things, it's collisions, co-learning, connectedness, diversity, density, along with kind of the other filters of being owner operated and first, unique, or best, and so on. Those are the things that we're looking for.
That's a pretty good answer. Yeah. You kind of had that in the back of your head already.
Well, it's very easy for me to recite because we do this kind of day in, day out, but it's also easy to remember because there's the 3 C's: collisions, co-learning, connectedness, and the 2 D's, which is density and diversity. I
always say when something is true to you, you don't really have to think about remembering anything because it's just the way you live your life. It's just your culture, right? And you talked about culture. You talked about how you want everybody downtown to walk by and know each other, to recognize each other. And if there's something you need, we got it. If we need something, then you got it. Why is culture so important to you? Because I've known that I've heard you say culture eats strategy for breakfast, and that to me seemed that like it threw me off for a little bit because I've always thought that strategy was very, very important. Why is culture more important than strategy at the end of the day?
So I don't think I actually said that. If I want to, I have my laptop here right now, so I'm going to actually look who said that. If I'm going to guess, I'm going to go with Peter Drucker, but let's see what Google
what's
says.
Crazy? If you Google Tony Hsieh quotes, that'll pop up as one.
Oh, damn.
No, I swear I never said that. So
somebody must have been paraphrasing. That's what happened.
Live debunk on Keem.
But I've definitely heard it before. So I'm trying to figure out who said it.
Do you believe it though?
The first search result is from Forbes. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So what's for lunch is what it says.
What's for
it
morning
says
too?
Okay. Here's the first sentence. There's a debate online whether the late management guru Peter Drucker ever actually said culture eats strategy for breakfast. It was attributed to him in 2006 by someone who later became an executive for it. Anyway, so I never said that, but
dang.
But I believe in the concept of it, and I'll tell you why. But we totally forgot this Fernet thing we were supposed to do.
Let's do it.
we're doing
Let's
it.
go ahead.
So for those of you who cannot see what's going on, we have actually lined up 4 of these mini bottles of Fernet Branca, and you guys have not had it, right?
Never.
No.
And
From what I've been
Beverly's
told,
gonna do a shot with us, I think.
from what I've been told, it's alcohol, so I can't drink.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah, Chuck will do double.
He was gonna do 2. So
Which is great because he's just camera switching. He doesn't.
Yeah, I'm just a co-host.
So Fernet so we're gonna pour, and for those of you who may not know what Fernet Branca, I first discovered it in San Francisco, which is where I grew up, over 20 years ago. And at the time, it was this kind of secret bartender's handshake almost in the Bay Area. Would you like me to pour you one, Beverly?
Let me see if they can see it.
Can I take a look at the bottle real quick?
Huh?
Let me see the bottle real quick.
Yeah,
Well, do most people listen or watch this? How does this work?
It's kind of 50-50 split
Yeah,
down the
all
road.
right.
Yeah.
we have some
All right,
listeners.
so for those of you who are not watching, or I mean, even if you're watching, I can describe what it is. It is an Italian liqueur that's soaked in 27 herbs, including ginseng,
Ooh.
myrrh, chamomile,
That's right up your
anise, probably licorice and other stuff. And so it tastes and smells like Chinese medicine. Have you smelled it yet?
No.
Oh, wait.
I didn't know whose is who.
He was like, I don't know if I was allowed to
I'm
open
being
it.
greedy over here. I'm taking them all.
Well, I like pouring
you,
it
sir.
into this. It's harder for me to drink actually out of the bottle. And so it tastes and smells like Chinese medicine, but 60 seconds after you drink it, it's you'll feel it coat your stomach. It's going to work its way down from your throat to your chest.
Ooh.
And so it'll coat your stomach. It's a digestive. It actually gets rid of nausea.
Cheers. Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
And it smells like medicine.
Yeah, but you can still smell it. You can still smell it, right?
Yeah, I
smell
can
it,
still
bro.
smell it right here.
No, he might get drunk.
Yeah, it smells like medicine.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
So you said it
Cheers.
cuts your stomach?
No, not cuts your stomach.
I was like, hold on, bro. You might want to.
Coats your stomach. It's a digestive. It gets rid of nausea.
I was like, that sounds a little dangerous. Maybe we shouldn't do it on camera.
Somebody might die.
Cheers. I will take a little shot of my Red Bull here.
And then, have you guys watched Pretty Woman?
You know what? No, I haven't.
Which was Pretty Woman?
I think it's the one with Julia. What's the name?
You know
Julia.
what? This interview's over.
Oh my
We're never
goodness.
gonna watch
We've
Pretty Woman.
ruined it.
I cannot continue this.
I know the song.
Pretty
Okay.
Woman. That one?
But literally neither of you have ever watched Pretty Woman.
You know what?
It's
one of those
have your
movies.
listeners listen to?
I'm pretty sure everybody has. I'm pretty sure we're just the 2 people in the world who haven't.
I haven't watched a lot of things. Now I get it. What's Pretty Woman?
It's
Pretty Woman
with
is a
Julia
movie.
Roberts, Richard Gere.
No.
Is it?
What?
Sorry.
Who? What is going on?
It's pretty much the movie of the girl who's like, you know, she finds out she's beautiful.
See,
right
this
at the
is
end.
why we need it to be taped live, so we could have callers right now that can tell you about Pretty Woman.
That's true.
And
That's true.
anyways,
I could
this
literally just
movie
call
that
anybody.
came out in the early '90s, maybe late '80s. I'm gonna go with 1989. Actually, I'm gonna have.
He's gonna
have a
look up the bio
Well,
right
I know.
now.
I got my
gonna get-
laptop with me.
You're going to get 2 more lifelines.
I believe I said 1989 and 1990.
Oh, this is yummy.
Oh, that's the year I was born.
Well, maybe that's why you.
You know what's crazy is I've seen Gone with the Wind, and that's an older movie.
Yeah.
Congratulations, bro.
Anyways, so this is not going to make any sense to you. So, short version is there's this scene in Pretty Woman where Richard Gere takes. Do you know who Richard Gere is?
I've heard of him. Yes.
You've heard it,
Yeah.
but you don't really know who he is.
This is not gonna end well for me.
Go down. Yeah, me either, though.
Do you know who Julia Roberts is?
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I've watched the movie in like
I
clips
know
throughout my
faces.
life.
Sorry. Now I got to look it up.
All right, so
Thanks,
Richard
Tony.
Gere takes Julia Roberts. Richard Gere is like this in the movie. He's Edward something.
Oh yeah, I know who that guy is.
Edward or Richard Gere?
Richard Gere. Sorry.
Yeah. So he's an older businesswoman that takes Julia Roberts. Anyways, in the movie, he takes her to the San Francisco Opera as a surprise. and she's never been to the opera before. And weirdly, actually, in the early days of Zappos, the San Francisco Opera is literally like 3 blocks from the original Zappos offices, where we were right before we moved to Vegas. And he tells her, this is not an exact quote, but the gist of it is, he tells her people's first reactions to opera are very visceral. They either love it or they hate it. If they love it, they will always love it. If they hate it, they can learn to appreciate it, but it'll never become a part of their soul. And the same is true for Fernet. And so
It's pretty deep.
Damn.
it is if you've seen Pretty Woman.
I kinda-
But
I
it's
felt
nothing. It means nothing if you've never seen
I'm
it.
just waiting.
Because-
I'm just waiting for all those comments to, because we
Yeah.
pretty much expose ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Sorry.
I'd rather tell you the truth, though. You know.
No. You can watch it before this goes live or whatever.
And just be like, "Hi, you guys can't
Yeah.
say shit."
Well,
We
we'll go
watched
ahead and
it.
watch it after this podcast. Then
Yeah.
we'll record an intro.
You
and then
two
we'll,
should watch
Yeah.
Pretty Woman together. While
got it.
One of you is drinking Fernet
Ooh, I'm down.
during the opera.
You got it.
It's
All right.
delicious. Could I have another
Sorry,
one?
we got totally sidetracked.
It's all good because you know what? That's the kind of theme of this whole
go on.
podcast, man.
This
Now, while are you gonna pour another one of those?
For
Yeah.
myself.
Okay.
Do you guys want one? I
you
got
guys use-
extras.
Yeah, well, Beverly said she was going to have one with
I know
us.
I'm still drinking.
Oh, you still drinking it?
I have half done.
Uh-oh.
No, you're half
Full.
left. Half full.
Half full, yeah.
She said half done.
It's a state of mind.
I can't. I'm just repeating because I don't know if that's making it to the microphone. I'm just.
So many cups.
Do you guys have to get new cups for the new pour, or can you use the same
Yeah.
ones?
No. Yeah. Otherwise, it's gonna see. We double cup because it soaks.
Tony, are you doing
Oh
another one?
wow!
I am.
All right, so
want
while
this
you're
one,
pouring
Chad?
that, I'm actually going to ask you another question. So you mentioned that you were in San Francisco originally with Zappos. What made the move? What made you make the move to Las Vegas, especially downtown Las Vegas?
So Zappos was founded in 1999, and I was not part of the original founding, but early on I was an investor and advisor and got involved in August of 99, August 1st, which 6 days ago, well, I don't know when this is coming out online, but right now we're recording August 7th. Mm-hmm. So 6 days ago was literally the 20-year anniversary of kind of my involvement with Zappos. And so 6 days ago, 20 years ago. But then 6 days ago, I went and actually had lunch at Mel's Diner in San Francisco with a guy named Fred, who got involved around the same time, and we were celebrating our 20-year anniversary. So originally was an investor and advisor, but prior to that, I had started an internet company called LinkExchange in 1996 with a college roommate. He and I actually ran a pizza business together. And we decided to get together to start LinkExchange, and we sold that in 1998 to Microsoft after growing the company to about 100 people or so. And what a lot of people don't know is the real reason why we ended up selling the company. And the real reason was because when we first started, it was like myself and his name was Sanjay, and as we started growing, we started hiring friends and friends of friends, and that whole strategy of hiring people we knew and people we enjoyed hanging out with worked really well until we got up to about 20 people, and then we ran into a problem, and the problem was we basically ran out of friends, and so then we had to. We were fresh out of college, didn't know, how to hire people. So we tried, we scanned resumes and interviewed people. Didn't really know what we were doing, and we ended up hiring a lot of people with the right skill sets and experiences, but we didn't know any better to pay attention to company culture. And over a period of time, a lot of the people that we hired weren't great for the culture, and by the time we got to 100 people, I myself dreaded getting out of bed in the morning to go to my own company, which was kind of a weird feeling. And
That's the worst feeling.
That's crazy.
And so and so yeah, this was 1998, and that's actually what was the real reason why we ended up selling the company. And we got super lucky with the timing. It was during the first initial .com boom, and we sold it to Microsoft. And then I decided to get into investing and invested in about 27 different internet companies, which I just realized is the number of herbs, and Fernet is also 27, which we talked about earlier for those listeners paying attention. And so we should
take a shot
drink
for that.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Numbers.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It all came full circle.
I'll air cheers you.
There you go, sir.
So, yeah, I did investing for a while, and then invested in Zappos, which was one of 27 companies. But I realized pretty soon, like within a year, that for me, investing was kind of boring, and I really missed
being involved.
Yeah, just being part of some, like actually doing stuff versus just putting money into something. And so I, out of all the companies we were involved with, Zappos was both the most interesting and also liked the people there the most. And so kind of slowly got sucked in, and then basically within a year ended up joining Zappos full time. We were still in the Bay Area at the time. And trying to remember the sequence and I totally forgot. What was the original question?
The original question was what inspired the move from San Francisco to Las Vegas? Because I believe originally you guys were out in Henderson.
No, but before that we were in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and actually originally Zappos was in an apartment. This was before I got kind of sucked in. They were in an apartment in San Francisco that after they left that apartment to go somewhere else in the San Francisco area, Craigslist moved in. And so that was the Craigslist apartment.
That's crazy.
And then they were in a few different locations. Eventually they moved into one of the lofts that I owned. And so that's kind of what got me more involved, just because they were nearby. And then we decided, I want to say 2000. So Zappos was founded in 99. I got involved full time in 2000. And then I would say 2000, maybe 2 or 3, we decided we want to build our brand to be about the very best customer service and customer experience. And we just happened to sell shoes. And literally one of our sayings internally is that we're a service company that just happens to sell shoes. And so once we decided we want to build a brand around customer service, then we started thinking about what that meant. That meant we had to build up our own customer service department. We couldn't just outsource it. And as it turns out, no one in the Bay Area really wants to do customer service as a career. So we looked at a whole bunch of different cities that had call centers and where we could hire people that were actually passionate about customer service. And Vegas was on the list. And it turns out it's, as we all know now, it's a 24/7 city, hospitality service focused, lots of call centers. And so we decided to move the entire company from San Francisco to Las Vegas in 2004. And at the time, I think we had about 90 employees, and about 70 moved with the company to Las Vegas. And we could have decided just to open up our call center here, but our thought process was, if we were like serious about building our brand, about being the best customer service and customer experience, then it shouldn't just be a department that we moved, it should be the entire company. And so we kind of just over lunch decided, yeah, this is the right thing to do. Moved actually to next to the airport. So originally we had an office off of Warm Springs Road, and then I think it used to be the Allstate call center. And then we moved, once we outgrew that, we were in Henderson for a few years, and then we kept growing. We're at about 1,500 employees now, and
wow,
we
from 70, 90 to 1,500. That's crazy.
Yeah, and for us, we were looking at our growth, and one of the weird things is when we were in Henderson, we originally had one building. This is off of Green Valley, across the highway from Green Valley Ranch Station Casino, and I don't know if you guys have been there, but there's a claim jumper there, and Rubio's and all that. And so we originally just had one building, but then we outgrew that, and then we added a second building, and then we added a third building that was on top of the hill. And I think from the beginning, this is super long-winded answer to your original question.
No, we need it all.
It's the best kind of answers,
Yes.
though.
Like I had the experience of what happened with my prior startup, where the whole company culture went downhill. So I wanted to make sure we didn't repeat the same mistake at Zappos. And so from the beginning, company culture was always important. And then as we grew, one of the things we realized was that as we spread amongst these different buildings, that the people that were at the building at the top of the hill never saw the people that in the building that I was with. And so we started looking all around for a place we could call home as a permanent campus, where we could house everyone under one roof and have enough land to expand upon, but have these, even I talked about collisions previously in the downtown Vegas or downtown project framework, but this is something we thought a lot about in the office framework at Zappos. And surprisingly, it was hard to find anything that fit those requirements within the entire Vegas Valley, not just Henderson or Vegas, the city. And so I'd say right about that time, I forget the exact years, I want to say 2000. So I'd say 2003 was when we decided we wanted to build our brand around customer service. And then that was part of the reason we all moved here. And then 2005-ish, roughly, actually, Beverly, do you know, 2005, 2006 was when we came up with our values? Or
2005 is when you started.
2005. And so, yeah, so I had sent out an email to the entire company because culture was something that I didn't want to make a mistake about it again, and we wanted to build a strong culture for the company, and basically asked everyone in the company, what should our values be? And I got a whole bunch of responses back from employees, went back and forth for about a year. The initial list was like 37 different values, which was a little too much to try to remember. So we combined a bunch of them, and then we eventually came up with the Zappos list of 10 core values, which is still true today. And then we built our hiring processes and firing processes and performance reviews and so on around those 10 core values. And for me, what I think is pretty cool is that those values, a lot of companies have these things called guiding principles or values or whatever that sound great on paper, but it ends up being like this thing on their lobby wall, and that no one really pays attention to. And what I really like about our core values at Zappos is not only do we build them into the hiring and firing processes and performance reviews at Zappos, but it's actually part of our everyday language. So a lot of times we don't even realize that we're using it in our language until people come and tour us, which we offer tours to the public, so you guys should definitely come check it out if you haven't. And so I was just Googling what these values are, and so here they are. If you guys want,
I believe I saw them online.
Yeah,
you
same
also
here.
did you did a presentation somewhere. I forgot. I was watching one of your videos, and you did a presentation where you talk about and you break down each and every single one of these core values and what they mean.
So there's 10 of them, and so we don't have to read through all of them, but if I was showing them to you, so if you wanted to pick one, and then I'm happy to talk about them, or we can move on to question number 2.
Service.
Deliver wild. Be adventure, creative.
Hold on. Create fun and a little weirdness.
Yeah, how do you... Can you
Is
explain
there
that
a
one?
line to the weirdness?
There's a prefix to it, which is a little weirdness, so we don't want
Oh yeah.
Psychotic people.
That's true.
But,
a little weirdness.
Yeah, so one of our values is to create fun and a little weirdness, which for us is really just a fun way of saying, because our belief is that everyone's a little weird somehow, and so it's really more just a fun way of saying that we really recognize and celebrate each person's individuality, and we want their true personality to shine in the workplace. So there's a lot of workplaces, I would guess, if I had to guess, probably 80-90% of most large companies where you're hired for a specific job function, and you go in and you have to act a certain way in front of your coworkers and your boss and so on, and you're a different person at work 9 to 5 Monday through Fridays versus after work or on weekends when you're hanging out with your friends, and you end up leaving a little part of yourself, or in most cases a big part of yourself, at home when you're at work. And so we kind of have the opposite belief, and some ways that it gets framed is there's companies that talk about work-life balance or work-life separation, and we actually believe in work-life integration. And so like it's just life, and you shouldn't like we believe that the people, and it's I understand that depending on how you hire people into a company, this might not be easy for most companies, but for us, because we hire people based on the Zappos 10 core values, we're literally just looking for people whose personal values match the corporate values. And so when they match, you're automatically 10 times more likely to be friends with your coworkers, in not a forced way, but that's literally what happens when personal values match the corporate values, and you're actually hiring people based on those values versus just having it be this meaningless plaque on the wall or something. And so the side effect is that everyone is actually friends with everyone, not because they're forced to, but because that's what just naturally happens. And even when people leave Zappos, they still maintain their connections and friendships with what were formerly their coworkers. And so my philosophy is like, why have this separation? And really, you should just work with people you would want to hang out with, and then you have the best of both worlds.
See, here's the thing though. Chuck and I have worked a job together at a regular 9 to 5 office. And people who have listened to this podcast will know when you put us together, like it's sometimes like, you know what I mean? Like our personalities are too similar, and we've gotten in trouble at a regular job for being ourselves. So do you think...
Right, but not with each other.
Right.
And so that's my point, is like you guys work together, and I'm guessing you're also friends.
Yeah.
And
best friends.
Isn't that the best of both worlds? And really what you're talking about is because someone else didn't fit in that framework that maybe had more power than you guys.
That company did not value the culture.
Yeah. But imagine if that company did, in which case wouldn't you love to work together and hang out on weekends and so on?
Of course.
And so that's what we're trying to do.
So do you believe that, and I want to go back to the hiring process because I do have a couple of questions, but do you believe that any company can implement the strategies that you use and you take action on?
Yeah, for sure. I think it just takes this commitment to it. I think when you're starting from scratch, it's a little easier because you can just and we didn't even have values in the early days. Like myself and the Fred guy that I was talking about, that we just had our 20-year anniversary. Anytime anyone in the company wanted to hire someone, they'd go through, and we did this up until we were 100 employees. So I think every company that's fewer than 100 employees can do this. Any candidate went through the normal hiring process, and then once they wanted to make them a job offer, in our case, the final quote unquote interview would be with me and Fred, and we would just go out to a bar or restaurant and just talk for a while. And we weren't interviewing for skills or experience or anything like that. It was super simple. It was, if we weren't forced to work with this person, would we still choose to grab a beer with them or dinner?
That's
I
dope.
love
And if the answer is
that.
no, like, so we didn't even think about values. It was just,
Right.
is this someone we want to hang out with?
Right.
And the answer is no, then we shouldn't hire him.
So once they got past are they competent enough to perform the skills that they're needed to provide? Can we still see value in them as a person outside of that skill set?
Yeah, and literally a lot of times Fred and I had no idea what job they were interviewing for, and so it was very simple. It's just, let's go hang out, and then, just like in general, like if you go hang out with someone for an hour or two, you decide at the end of that, do we want to hang out again or not?
Because there's
He's
people
too
that
weird.
there's people that I hang out with, and I'm like, I probably wouldn't hang out with
Yeah,
them.
me too. I'm like, nah.
The whole
Cut him.
I get it. I wanted to ask though, because I read something online where essentially through the hiring process, you guys would pay employees who were like basically trying to get the job. You would pay them for the training, but then you'd give them like a bonus to quit before they started the job. Is that something that's still implemented?
Yeah, and it's kind of the same idea in the reverse. Like, we don't really want employees that are there just for a paycheck. We want employees there because they're passionate about the company, the culture, our mission, and so on. And I think the last thing we want is someone that's there just because it's the only way they can pay rent. So we'd rather pay them so that that question of, are you there just to pay rent, is out of the picture, and they can go find another job. Or
because there's plenty of jobs that will pay your rent, right? I mean, at the end of the day, everybody needs to get their rent paid. That is, of course, always the driving factor for where somebody has to go to work.
It's more just giving them relieving the pressure
Right.
so that they can find what they're passionate about. And from our perspective, or I'll just speak for myself, it's no like judgment or anything. Like, my kind of personal, I don't know what you call it, mission or goal is to help people find the intersection of what they're passionate about and what they're good at and what's going to add value to whatever organization they're with. And sometimes the answer might be something in Zappos, and sometimes it's outside of Zappos. And I don't really care that much about which one it is, as long as they find it, as long as it's true.
That's dope.
That's true. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to, and I think you've said this before. If not, so somebody else. You said chase vision, not the money, right? Chase vision, which means even down to an employee level, they have to come in wanting to be there and to make an impact, right? Whether it's, and this is another one of the things that I want to talk about, is that your company's also been known for having records for staying on the phone for the longest, right? Your call center, one of the phone calls was like 12, 14 hours long. That's something you don't really hear about other companies. Why do you encourage this? Do you I want to know what your philosophy is on keeping a customer on the phone for so long and getting to know them.
All right, so I'm gonna answer that question, but I've been Googling while you've been asking that question because
You trying to find out who said that?
no
Chase vision.
No, it's slightly different. It's I did find it because I've actually used it in my presentations.
Is that Biggie Smalls?
Oh, very good. And the exact
I know
quote,
who that is.
Is that Tupac?
Is that Tupac?
Chill,
No,
bro.
but literally, you guys can. I don't know how you do your editing, but
We don't edit these videos.
you can insert this photo. Anyways,
Oh, okay.
yes, we're looking at Biggie Smalls.
Send me a screen recording of your screen there.
Notorious B.I.G. And one of his quotes, which I've used in my business presentations, is
Awesome.
don't chase the paper, chase the dream.
Yeah.
And then there it is.
Don't chase the paper, chase the dream.
Classic photo.
You gotta say it in his voice.
And so, which is basically what don't chase the...
Can you angle a little bit more? There you go.
Oh,
They
That way
can
the
see
camera
it.
can see
Yep,
Just
they can see it
insert it.
now.
Boom, the video's been edited.
Keem's lazy ass. No, I'm kidding.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You're quoting a hip hop artist.
So, well, literally what I say in my business presentations is I just want an excuse to use that photo. And so, no, but I think that's something that I super believe in. And actually, I'll even, since I'm on my laptop right now, I even got a text message this morning from a friend of mine, yesterday morning at 9:55 a.m. And her question was, and this is a good friend of mine that's been involved. She's very entrepreneurial and has been involved in a bunch of different businesses. And she texted, may want to get your advice soon. P.S. What's the best decision-making framework you found? Specifics for assessing opportunities biz-wise, like cost benefit of staying in one business versus another, etc. And then she sent me a couple of emoticons. And then I responded. Let's see, when did I respond? I responded yesterday. So she texted me at 9:55 a.m. I responded yesterday at 10:41 a.m. And I just said, what are you actually passionate about? And then she said, is that a framework or a question? And I said, framework. And so, and then she sent me this picture. And she said, sweet, using it. It's her notepad. It says, sweet, using it now at a bar in London. So anyways, that's something I definitely believe in. I think that you should start with what you're passionate about. I think a lot of people start with, how can I make the most money or whatever? But I believe that if you start with what you're passionate about or what you feel true connection in terms of purpose, like that's going to get you way further and you'll be much happier doing that.
There's also, unless there's a sense of urgency for money, like for example, like if you have kids, maybe you don't, I don't know, maybe you want to take that gamble of starting your own business. But a lot of people say like, oh, if I have this thing that I have to do, like for example, I have to pay $2,000 a month in student loans, otherwise they garnish wages or whatever it is. When you follow your passion and you work in your creative field, even though financially you might not make as much money as you take in a corporate job, I believe that there's that passion that gets filled within you compensates for that lack of financial. And even though you may not be making necessarily as much money, if you keep doing it and you keep building on top of what you're passionate about, eventually I believe the money will come.
I agree with that. I guess what I would challenge most people with they think they might be in a place where they don't have the choice or and so on, is what are the other things? And I think that, like, I ask it more as questions, but I think it's worth, it's really more about a self-reflection thing, is like, what are the other things that you assume you can't negotiate on? Or I'm trying to think of what's the right wording. Like, what are the other things that you assume are a given? Because in most cases, I don't think they are. And so people might say, like the example you gave is like the student loans example, or I won't be able to pay rent, or I won't be able to do X, Y, Z, when all those things are choices, right? And you have to decide which thing you're the most passionate about. And if you're really passionate about X, Y, Z, whatever X, Y, Z is, then if you kind of live by that philosophy from the beginning and that's what you want to do, then you don't necessarily have to go to school in the first place to study stuff that is not in line with XYZ. Or maybe there's other ways to be more in line or to have education and learning about XYZ versus the kind of default standard, oh, I need to go to college in order to do that. Because I will bet you that if you talk to most entrepreneurs, whatever was specifically taught in college in terms of classes is not that relevant to what they're actually doing as an entrepreneur.
Right.
And so if you really want to go the entrepreneur route, like, I think it's more about asking what is really necessary, what actually falls in line with what you're passionate about versus what society expects of you or your parents expect from you or your peers like are doing. And having the ability, the courage, whatever you want to call it, to ask why or why not, and versus just following kind of the default path. And I think if you actually, it kind of goes back to the whole passionate thing, and that's kind of the test. Like, if you're so passionate about something, then you'll look for every way to help make that passion thing come true, versus I think what most people do is they look for a reason not to do an idea that they have. Like,
I can't start my business because I don't have a degree,
or I don't have the connections, or I don't have the funding, or I don't have, like, you can come up with, there's 1,001 excuses not to do something. And ultimately that's, I think, more about not wanting to put yourself in the situation of being in the position where you have to figure it out. It's much easier to come up with an excuse to not have to do something.
Right.
And so I'm a big believer in the whole burn the ships framework. Have you guys heard of that?
Yeah, it's kind of like what me and Chuck always talk about, of throwing yourself into the fire.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
you won't know. You won't know that you can or cannot do something unless you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the burn the ships analogy is, I think there was a Spanish, this was something that Fred used to always, that I was talking about, would always tell the story of, like, there's this Spanish explorer that I think went to South America or something, and and they went to go conquer South America and long time ago, many centuries ago. And then once they got onto land, he had people burn the ships, and everyone was like, "What are you doing?" And then his response was, "Now we have no choice but to move forward and succeed."
Yeah.
Whereas if they always had the option to turn back,
That backup plan, that plan B.
right? And so, so I mean, for me, that kind of goes back to how passionate are you actually about what it is, or are you like, this is something I'd like to do, but maybe I'll never follow through because
X, Y, and Z.
You're always
That's
going to have
deep. Yeah, that's
100 excuses.
that level of commitment, right? What level of commitment do you have to your craft and to your passion? That's interesting. I want to kind of go back to how you got involved with Zappos. First of all, being an early investor in it, and then eventually becoming the CEO of Zappos. What made you think that the internet was going to become a thing? Like, back in, I mean, you're talking about 99, 2000. We didn't have what we have today. We don't have mobile apps where you can just swipe and something it shows up at your front door. We didn't have, all these big internet companies like Amazon, Zappos, Facebook. You didn't have these companies. So what made you lean towards the idea that this might be something big, as opposed to like, oh, it's just a fad, it's a bubble, it's not gonna last?
So I was always pretty entrepreneurial growing up, and so as a kid in middle school, and this was what year were you guys born, you said?
I was born 90 or
93.
93.
Okay, so I was in middle school in 1985, and
Nice.
I specifically remember 85 because that's the year Back to the Future came out. Did you guys ever watch that?
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I know. It was before Pretty Woman, so
For sure.
And so in middle school, like, I was just always trying out these random entrepreneurial things. And like, I was on the swim team, and I saw they sold baked potatoes. And so I researched how much would it cost to go buy potatoes and sell baked potatoes, which I think were, I don't know, maybe $2 at the time. And so one of the things that I got involved with was the mail order business, which this is all pre-internet. And so back in the day, literally you'd look on the back of magazines or catalogs, and you'd order stuff and send in a
check.
paper check. Yeah. And then the normal time was 4 to 6 weeks later, they would send you back whatever you
Oh my God.
bought. Yeah, like this.
Oh my God.
Well, you said 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, 4
That
to
sounds
6 weeks, and
that's
that
a
was
lifetime.
normal. Like literally, go look at the back of magazines and whatever mail order catalogs. That's the normal time frame that something gets sent back. And I remember as a kid, my best friend at the time, he had this book called Free Stuff for Kids, and it was a book that was maybe, I don't know, 100 or 200 pages, and everything in there was either free or up to $1 that you could order, and then a lot of them you'd have to include SASE, which was SASE, which stood for self-addressed stamped envelope. And so basically your max thing for quote unquote free was you would send in $1 in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and I think stamps were 20 cents at the time or something. And so you might get something like I don't know, just these little random tchotchke things, and
Pet rock.
it could be a pet rock, or it could be a book of recipes, or I don't even remember, but stuff that kids might be interested in. And so at the time, my younger brother and I subscribed to this magazine called Boy's Life. I don't know if that still exists or not, but I remember at the back of the Boy's Life magazine, they would have these ads for and get magic tricks or these novelty things and so on. So that was another mail order type of thing. And so I wrote a type letter to the editor of, or whoever the publisher of the book Free Stuff for Kids, because in the back of Boy's Life magazine, there was this company that sold button making machines, meaning like these buttons that with pins that you'd wear on your shirt or whatever. Mm-hmm. Not like buttons that had slogans,
right,
like
little,
for political campaigns or whatever. And so
vote for Pedro.
And yes, exactly. And so for each button, it would cost 25 cents to buy the outer plastic wrap and the metal stuff and so on to make the buttons. But then I had to spend originally it was $50 for like a very difficult way to make the buttons that was very manual. And then I had a semi-automatic thing that I eventually bought for like $350. And so, but basically I was, and then my original thing, going back to the whole swim team thing, was I was like selling these buttons to people that wanted to support the swim team, but not that many people bought them. But then I wrote to the editors of this book, Free Stuff for Kids, and said, hey, for $1 in a self-addressed stamped envelope, people can send in a photo and then they can get a button made out of it. And this was pre-internet. There was no Google or anything. And so they thought I was a legitimate business and adult. And so,
oh, damn. That's
and
crazy.
so, so 6 months later, I was in the book. And then one of the quote unquote tricks that I learned from reading articles and books on how to run a mail order business back in the 1980s was that the way you track the orders you get is that you just say it's the department. And so I said, if you want this thing, then mail it to Department FSFK, which stood for Free Stuff for Kids. Yeah. And then I could track what was actually, so that actually ended up being a completely free thing. And for the next, 5 years or so, brought in probably $200 or $300 a month, which was a lot of money for a kid in the 80s.
Definitely.
And then
for the 80s in general,
middle school too.
And then I went to college and then passed it off to my next youngest brother, and then he went to middle school or high school, and then passed it off to the next brother. So it was kind of this
Almost creating generational wealth.
Yeah, the family. Middle school wealth.
So anyways,
So that got you basically thinking about the idea that, hey, here's something that I don't have to be person to person making business with, right?
So it was more that I knew the mail industry worked, which doesn't really, or mail order industry is, I think, what it was called. And then now fast forward to 1999, when the founder of Zappos, Nick, had this idea about selling shoes online, and his whole story was he tried to find a pair of shoes in a mall and couldn't find it, and went all over the place and couldn't find it. And he did some research, and he found that the fastest growing segment of the footwear industry, which was $40 billion a year in 1999,
Wow.
was by mail order, which was what I was just talking about.
Wow.
And that was 5% at the time, and it was growing. So 2 billion already. And then so we did a little research on our own and emailed it's very few customers, but emailed the existing customers and asked how many of them had purchased shoes by mail order before. And it was 1 out of 3. And so then in our minds, if the mail order industry was already 5%, which was 2 billion of 40 billion, then 1 out of 3 implied that the opportunity was at least 6 billion. And that's where it seemed very logical that the world was going to shift from paper mail order catalogs to online, even though we were at the very beginning of online. So in our minds, here's a $6 billion opportunity. So super long-winded answer to your
That's
question.
a great answer though, because I got to learn about. I mean, I didn't completely forgot about mail order and how you used to
same
actually
here.
like. First, it was mail order. When we grew up, it was more. You saw a number on the screen on the TV, and then you would call to get your.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like that was the next evolution of it, and then the one after that would be, I guess, the internet.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Did you ever end up finding out what happened to that button making business? Did it end up going out of business?
It's still in.
Has it moved to the
family.
internet?
No, I think after my youngest brother went to college, then it probably shut down.
Close the doors.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy, man. I mean, shoes in general, though, like, I don't know. Oh, be careful there.
Sorry, I just hit your microphone.
How's the, what is it
I
called?
think we need another Fernet.
My
though.
stomach's coated.
Fernet
That's what I can tell you.
Branca.
No, but we should-
I love it.
How's it hitting you, Chuck?
Oh, I feel it.
Well, we also have the audience members that have not really.
How do you guys feel it?
Yeah. How do you feel, Jen?
I feel fantastic.
No, they can't hear you on the microphone.
I feel great.
Now, I'm going to let you go ahead and do that real quick. One of the questions that I had for you was, because you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned how you get involved with local business, you help start them up, you invest in them. What is your level of investment when it comes to you personally being their decision-making, branding, purpose? Like, what is your involvement with them?
Wait, sorry, with who?
With the local businesses that you invest into?
Oh, so I would say in general, and this is not specific to just downtown, but same thing is true for what we're trying to do at Zappos with internally. It's called market-based dynamics, which is a whole nother long conversation that we can talk about. But I never want to be the actual decision maker in actual investment, and instead I want to be the one that's empowering people to be the decision makers. And so there's a lot of people that try to pitch me on business ideas and so on, and no matter how many times I try to explain to them, like, I'm not the decision maker, they don't believe me, because most organizations are hierarchies, and the person at the top of the hierarchy always can do whatever they want, whereas we've specifically set our rules, policies, systems, and processes, and so on to exactly prevent that, and part of the reason, and I think probably the most the best examples on the Zappos side, where we have 1,500 employees, And, we talked about earlier where we started out with 70 moving to Vegas, and then we eventually grew to 1,500. But even myself, and I think this is probably true for every employee, as we've gotten bigger, you just feel like things move slower. There's more bureaucracy and so on. And I don't think it's any one person's fault. It's just a function of the structure and the size. Mm-hmm. And so what we're trying to do at Zappos and what we're trying to do on the DTP side and on the Ferguson side is to essentially get rid of the hierarchy. And so anytime someone asks me to try to, either overrule a decision or try to get them a funding or whatever, that never works. And I think most people don't realize why it doesn't work, because I understand that's what happens in the normal world. But or even forget funding, like even a meeting or doing something. Like the reason I'm here is not doing this podcast interview is because I literally get probably 10 requests a day for different types of interviews. Some are podcast interviews, some are newspaper interviews or whatever. And there's just literally not enough time in the day for it. But the using this as an example, it's not like I went and researched what you guys are doing and then said, oh, I'm going to do this. It was literally because Jen, in this specific case, like told me to do it and threatened
awesome
to,
Jen over there.
Threatened to
You said threatened?
She said threatened to punch me in the face.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Nobody threatened anybody around here.
Yeah, like, you better do this.
No, so and I'm using that as an example because, because I trust her and I'm super glad I did, but out of 10 random emails a day, like there's no way to do the research to know which ones to do or which ones not to do. And so I think most organizations, especially as they get bigger, it's more kind of top-down hierarchy, like the people at the top tell the people underneath what to do, whereas my philosophy is to kind of do the reverse. Like I want what would normally be perceived as people that are told what to do, instead flip it, and like I want to be of service or helpful to them, right? And so it's up to them to prioritize for me. And so anytime whether it really doesn't matter, let's just call it meetings in general, I'll be like, great, if you get invited by, in this case, Jen, but there's different people at Zappos and different people at Ferguson's, different people at Downtown Project, like just have them ask me versus I think kind of most people's mindset is like, oh, let's go above them. And then it really needs to come from the people that I'm trying to support.
So instead of trying to run the business for whoever you're investing with, give them the platform and the ability to run their own business the way they would run it. That way they can run that business entirely with their own philosophies instead of you trying to make it your own, right?
I mean, that's part of it, but part of it is also like Jen knows, like don't have an infinite amount of time, and so I trust that if Jen says, hey, in this case, you should do this podcast, and she did it as well, and you guys are fun guys, and and then like I don't need to go verify that. I just trust Jen.
Gotcha.
Got it.
So
that's awesome, man. So one of the last questions that I had is we're seeing a lot of talk online about Zappos Airlines. Is that ever going to be a thing?
Hopefully. I mean, part of the thing I was talking about, mentioned a little bit earlier, is that on the Zappos side of things, we're going down this path internally that we're referring to as MBD, or market-based dynamics. And so right now we have about 1,500 employees and about 300, we call them circles or teams. And so employees can belong to multiple teams, and traditionally those teams are arranged like hierarchically. And so not that different from like in a normal organization where the people are arranged hierarchically. And so in a normal organization, you get your budget and your headcount from your boss if you're part of a big corporation. So same idea normally, replace people with circles that get their headcount from the circle above. And what we're trying to do is transition it so that instead of the circles being in a hierarchy, those circles are each their own individual small business or startup, which is literally what happens in a normal world. Like if there's a bakery in, or small businesses or whatever, they're not in a hierarchy. They're just coexisting. And there's no manager or boss that tells a bakery, that tells the owner of a bakery what to do. Like if they have the customers, then they can do whatever they want. And so we're basically having each of those circles come up with a menu of services that initially they might offer internally, but then the goal is offer them externally as well. So for example, we have a team that, or let's just say you want to start up a cupcake bakery and your passion is making cupcakes.
It is.
Perfect. But your passion might not be
The business side and everything.
you still need a website, and you still need to figure out how to put ads on Google or Facebook or whatever, and you still need to set up Wi-Fi or whatever, right? So all those things are things that are necessary, but not really your passion. And you might try to do it yourself, which is then taking away time from doing what you're actually passionate about, which is cupcakes. Or you might try to hire someone by Google, or because your uncle's best friend's sister is a lawyer, so you hire her as your legal counsel, but who knows if that's the right legal person.
Right.
And they might make a mistake that 7 years from now turns out was a really big mistake, and you lose your whole company because she was not a good lawyer. But if you had a trusted brand and company that was focused on customer service, which is what Zappos is about, and we have the saying that Zappos is a service company or a customer service company that happens to sell shoes, but replace that with we're a service company that happens to sell blank, which might be legal services, which might be website services, which might be online advertising services. Fill in the blank. If we're already doing it for ourselves, then why not offer that to the world, to every startup, to every small business, so that they don't have to go through what took us 20 years to figure out, and so that they can focus on making the best cupcakes in the world instead of all the other stuff that is necessary but not differentiating.
Gotcha.
Damn.
That's a pretty long-winded answer, but it's good. One of the absolute, and I swear this is my last question.
Keep going, man.
Because we are running a little bit long. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to us and having this conversation. We really do appreciate it. But one of the personal questions that I had for you was, I don't know if you've heard of blockchain technology.
I have.
There you go. Okay. So is Zappos or is any of your businesses taking steps towards adopting blockchain technology?
So I have two answers to that. One is I don't know, but that's kind of our whole framework. Like you could ask that about replace blockchain with cupcakes or with airlines or with anything. Like the whole point is it's not my decision. We're just trying to support whatever employees are passionate about.
Gotcha.
And that's the whole market-based dynamics platform, MBD platform that we're trying to build, is that if you're passionate about it, plug into it, and then you can go. We're trying to create the infrastructure so that you can do it.
Right.
And so the answer might be yes, I just don't know about it. And because we're not trying to do this top-down approach, it's really more supporting whatever people's passions are. And that's one answer. My general answer that, let's say your question had nothing to do with Zappos specifically, because I have been asked about blockchain in general, is what problem, my general response is, what problem are you trying to solve? And a lot of times, depending on who you're talking to, people will say, well, then you don't need to worry about this or this or this or this. And a lot of times those aren't actual problems. Those are just features of blockchain, but it's not something that, I'll just speak in the case of Zappos, like were ever actual problems of Zappos as a customer. So, and so I'm trying to think of an example with blockchain specifically.
Well, I'll give you an example. The reason I asked was because I've been doing a lot of deep dives on blockchain technology and finding out that you can use blockchain to track the authenticity of products in the retail space. From finding out like, oh, is this pair of shoes, is this pair of Nikes really a pair of Nikes, which is not a problem in the United States much, but it's a problem in other countries like China or
so that's a perfect example. So on Zappos, we don't buy stuff to sell from sources that may not be reputable. Like we literally buy from Nike themselves. So because part of our brand and part of our differentiators, like, yes, we have the consumer facing side, which is all about customer service and experience and trust and so on. But separately, behind the scenes, we have super strong relationships with our vendors, including Nike. And so we have this super strong relationship with Nike as an example, but there's 1,000 brands we work with. And so like when Nike ships us stuff, we're not like, no one at Zappos is saying, oh, is this really authentic? Because we know it's Nike's shipping us stuff, which we have a strong relationship. Like maybe if you guys bought randomly from an Amazon,
Alibaba.com,
Alibaba
or whatever, like from a third-party reseller, then there's some question. But
or you buy on Craigslist
or Craigslist, but we are literally buying from Nike, and we have in-person meetings. They come to our office, like there's no question, is this authentic? And so, in that specific example, blockchain is not solving any problem, because we already have a trusted relationship. So we don't need an extra layer of complexity to solve a problem we don't have.
I completely agree with you when you said it was more of a feature than it fixing a problem. I mean, the only reason I could really see Zappos using it is like, let's say you guys had like a limited run of shoes. You wanted to make sure that you bought one of 50. You know what I mean? Then you could track if that really was one of 50.
Well, what my response to that would be one way to track it, or because we have a brand that we've built up over the last 20 years and a reputation, we could just call whoever's selling and say, hand deliver it, and then that we don't need all this extra technology to make sure. Like if the problem that blockchain is solving is authenticity, for example, like that's not a problem we deal with. That might be a problem that if you're a platform for third-party resellers that you need to deal with, but that's not our business. So it might be solving a problem for them. It's not solving a problem for us.
That's a good answer. I never thought about, because I've been really looking at mostly technology across overseas, and it can go from like food to manufacturing to all that stuff. But I completely agree with the fact that Zappos is a reputable company. And if you're buying something from Zappos, there's a 100% chance that it's an authentic product. Never said that it wasn't, but like just kind of implementing blockchain technology into it, I can definitely understand why you said it's more of a feature than an actual problem, because that's not a problem today. But yeah, man. Did you have any other questions, Chuck?
No, you pretty good with all the questions. I was like, damn.
How about Jen? You got any questions?
From me?
Yeah.
Jen?
Here we got Jen Toller in the corner.
Spot. I don't think so.
I don't know if they can hear you.
Jen, you gotta go over.
Yeah.
I gotta see your face.
Hi guys, I'm back. What's your most anticipated excitement for Ferguson?
Ooh.
I think she's asking you.
She's asking me?
The amphitheater.
I was asking Tony Hsieh.
There we go. She clarified.
I'm most I don't even know what. That's a lot of words. I'm going to say for the front of Ferguson's to open up, because that's kind of, so we've been living on the back side of it, which is residential, but the front side is going to be open, I think, in time for Life is Beautiful, which is... Let me look it up. I'm going to look it up.
Chuck, you should know. You're working it.
Am I?
It is September 20th, 21st, and 22nd.
So is that going to be a stage for Life is Beautiful?
Ooh,
Oops, sorry.
It's going to be
I just assumed
more than a stage.
Ooh. So it's going to be open because I've been there a few times, and the gates are always going to be open, or they're still going to be locked for office hours? Or how does it work?
I don't know. But Life is Beautiful.
I can come closer.
Oh,
hi. Ferguson's, when it's open, there'll be hours. So the gate will open with hours, and then it'll be closed when it's not open.
Okay.
But during the festival, it'll be open during festival hours, and then we'll close it at night.
Yeah.
Nice.
But the festival is
September 20th to the 22nd.
You got the laptop.
well. Look, no, well, I'm only saying this because you can't get into Ferguson's during the festival.
Definitely
Well, it's
not.
in the footprint, so you have to have, you have to have Life is Beautiful
But I
tickets.
highly recommend going because it's 18 city blocks that are fenced off. I think it's 3 miles of fencing, and there's 8-year-olds, there's 80-year-olds, and
Life is Beautiful is
everyone in
dope.
between. Yeah.
Nice. I still haven't been, man. Shame on me.
Yeah.
Haven't been yet.
What?
I know.
I've been to the old one
I
too.
know. I've been invited too by Jen, by Kelly. Yeah.
You know what you
Keem's
should
busy.
do is you should interview Justin Winiger, the CEO of Life is Beautiful, before, like, soon.
Mm-hmm.
Before, I would say in the next
He gets
3
too
weeks.
busy.
Well, if you want to
before
go,
it happens.
Oh.
I mean, if we can get like if we can get like an email chain going, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
No, I
That'd be
mean
so
on the
dope.
podcast.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's get an email chain going. We'll gladly have them on. We don't have anybody for next week. We're gonna do like a freestyle episode, or
Yeah,
we
we're
just kind of did like a behind the scenes. But
We're going to show our
gladly have
beautiful
them on.
faces and just talk to each other. Oh.
But we appreciate
nice.
you being on, Tony.
Thank
We
you so
really do
much,
appreciate
Tony.
taking your time to come down here and have the conversation with us. We try to be as prepared as possible, and I know there's a lot more to you, but I think we got a lot of good information and kind of we learned a lot. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Do you want people? Do you want to let people know where they can find you online or any links, useful links?
Well, she's been shying off in the corner, but I'm gonna call Beverly up
Here we go.
because I want her to actually talk for. You should ask her. I want her to talk for 1 or 2 minutes. She's super shy, so
Okay.
be nice to her.
Just like me.
Come on,
But
Beverly.
I want you to ask her about what she's doing in the Zappos market-based dynamics
Market-based dynamics.
MBD. This is the whole thing where we're encouraging everyone to be entrepreneurs.
Right.
So she's actually doing something called travel packs.
Ooh.
Right? Am I pronouncing it?
Close. It's travel. It says Zappos Packs.
Zappos packs for travel.
Zappos packs.
Anyways, I'm clearly not the right spokesperson for it. So I'm going to call her over and you can ask her.
You can
Let's
bring
do
the
it.
chair over too.
Yeah.
I can be on my knees.
If you
Oh.
want, you can sit next to each other.
Mean it like that.
If it's more comfortable, yeah.
We'll take that back. All good.
Just pretend she's a new guest.
All right, Beverly.
Yo, what up?
Welcome to the morning dinner, brand new episode.
This is the next week's episode.
This is really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's kind of trippy at first. It's like, oh damn.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
So you probably sit in the corner for the last hour 20 minutes. You don't get this sound that you're getting right now, right?
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
All right. So the microphone, you actually kind of have to be a little bit close to it.
Okay.
So that way
you
get
can
your
actually pull a
voice.
little bit closer so you're not
Closer
slouching.
than this?
Oh no, I'm just saying so you're not slouching if you don't want to slouch.
Beverly, what do you do downtown, or what do you do for Zappos?
Oh, what do I do for Zappos?
Yep.
Well, there's a lot to that, so I'll just give you just a brief history. I've been with the company 15 years, like in the next 2 months.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's been really cool to watch the company grow and to be a part of that experience. But what Tony was saying about market-based dynamics, where each circle has their own P&L and kind of thinking about their, I guess, each circle as a startup business. I'm doing something within that world where we've branched off into something that's called Z Franchise. And so I'm a co-founder of Zappos Packs, which is basically curating the products that we currently have on the Zappos sites through the lens of travel. So whatever destination that you're going to, we will help you pack for your unique travel adventure. So the problem that we're trying to solve for, and Tony was mentioning, like, what problems are you trying to solve for in the company versus like what added features might be nice? The problem that we solve for, I guess maybe I'll ask you guys questions. Hopefully it applies
We're
to
the
you.
perfect people to ask.
Yes, please.
So if you're traveling and going to, let's say you're planning a trip somewhere, do you ever get stressed out in terms of like what you're going to pack?
Oh yeah, I get
100%.
so stressed out that I don't pack until an hour before I leave
Okay.
because I don't want to do it.
You don't want to do it, right? So
Yep.
some people get stress and anxiety around that. So we noticed that was a problem. And, maybe people don't know how to account for like humidity and wind chill and all those
Nobody
other
thinks of
factors.
that.
Yes, yeah, I
No, you can't just look at temperature. You have to think about like wind chill and humidity and what
Right.
fabrics are the best. So that is something that we're trying to help customers with. And so you can come to, so Zappos Packs is all about packing to make sure that wherever your adventure takes you in life, that you feel your best.
Now,
We can help you with that.
Does that have its own website, or is that part of the Zappos website?
It is. We are, because we just launched on the Zappos website, so we're a part of the Zappos experience.
Okay.
So you can go to the site navigation and go to Zappos Packs. But if you ever wanted to go to it, it's Zappos. Zappos.com /e/packs. But I think you can also do zappospacks.com, and that redirects to that
There you
as well.
go. That's a lot simpler.
Yeah, I think that's what we were trying to. Oh, okay.
So one of the things that.
Oh yes, Instagram. Yes, please follow us on Instagram.
Ooh.
Zappos Packs on Instagram, please.
Should that be the first link on this video? That should be
Yes,
the first link?
Zappos,
We'll do it.
Zappos Packs
we
on
got you.
Instagram.
We'll
would
go ahead
be,
and do that.
Would be amazing.
So
Are you filming this? Oh my god!
I got Tony in the
There's a
corner
lot.
filming this whole thing
Can
on
I?
his phone.
we're just getting more angles, but tell them. But there's a difference.
What?
Because it's not just sounds like a good idea, but tell them about some of the customer validation and experiments
Customer validation.
Oh yes.
and that's
Oh, the whole journey. So basically, yeah, it's been.
people probably don't know what that is.
Yeah, well, you mean like what the journey that I went on for this to actually be a part of
We
the.
just don't fund random ideas.
No, yes, you don't. Okay, so yes.
Yeah, do it.
So this has been, I would say, like a long time coming within the past year. So I think something that I love about Zappos and having that entrepreneurial spirit, and especially now with the world of market-based dynamics, something when he's saying that each circle has their own P&L, and instead of having that top-down budgeting, what's in, sometimes in certain companies where certain areas of the company have all the budget, and if you get like one no, then the idea is squashed, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so what's great about this is that all it takes is one yes, but you can't just have a great idea. You want to make sure that you test it. And so that's something that we did, I think even on like a third-party site to see just like one of those, I don't know, other WYSIWYG websites.
Test you did.
Oh, the test. Oh, yes. So what we did is we launched our own site just externally, and we had people just even internally in the company. We asked them, where are you going? What is like the destination, and what are the activities that you'll be doing on these trips? And so
Right,
then we
that you're
started doing
planning.
that, and we started doing that and seeing if this was actually a need that people would use, and if we were selecting the right product. Then we did a lot of user testing just externally out of the company to see what they thought of the site, and they were saying that yes, this is something that they would actually need, because when you think about like the vacations that you guys plan,
Right.
there's so much money and time that go into it,
Right.
and if you don't pack correctly, and I'm not talking about trying to be fashionable or anything, but sometimes if you wore the wrong shoes and you get a blister and then you can't walk anymore, right? Because you didn't pack correctly,
Ruins
whether
the
it's
entire
like
vacation.
it ruins the entire vacation.
Yep.
You can't do anything. You're just like sitting in pain. And so how can we help you to make sure that you're having the best experience and that you've packed confidently? And so we started testing it externally with user testing, and that was the feedback that we got, is that we were solving
That's
for a
awesome.
problem, and then pitched to different circles in the company for funding. And so
Right.
now that everyone has their own, I guess, like budget, that's how we were able to move forward. So it wasn't like going straight to Tony.
Right.
It was actually going to these circles to see if they find value.
Right.
Yeah. For that
So
funding.
you originally tested this idea and marketed it to your internal Zappos employees, right?
To try it out
So
and
you
like
grew a
process.
proof of concept and everything.
We had a proof
Yep.
of concept, yes, and then we tested it externally on usertesting.com, and then asked the questions to see what people thought of it and if they would actually use the service.
Now, is this service like a monthly membership? Is it a one-time?
Oh no, it's
deal? How does
absolutely
it-
free.
It's free.
Oh yes.
Whoa.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's part of the Zappos website, and so the first phase of this is really we are selecting destinations that are trending and are relevant and timely,
Right.
and then letting you know as far as what is necessary to pack confidently for that particular trip. But the
Right.
evolution of what we would like to do is really that type of like high customer service type of touch. And that's what we do at Zappos, like that emotional connection is eventually like you can then call in. Well, you can do that now. You can actually call in right now.
Yeah.
And, our customer service would be really happy to like help anyone out with their destination.
Right.
But eventually they will have hopefully like our own line, or they can email and then tell us your destination, the activities, and then we will help you with a packing list.
I was gonna say, so is it? Do you see this eventually evolving into like a concierge kind of thing, where you can
Yes.
call in and say, "What is there to do in the city?"
Ooh, you never know. Like sky's the limit, the possibilities. And I guess how we'll evolve is just basically seeing from like customer data and what their needs are.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, somebody who may not necessarily want to take a trip, if they know it's all going to be planned for them, that may inspire them to go, oh, you know what? I've always wanted to go to San Francisco. I've always wanted to go to New York or whatever. And, having those logistics taken care of is just another bumping them up towards taking that step.
So it's just like, oh, it's going to be rainy in New York for the next 2 weeks. You plan, so we might put some rain boots or something.
Yes, I would love that. That would be like a wow example where you're just like leveling up. I would love to go into the planned trips for people,
I'd be
and then
like,
like
damn.
surprise boxes. If we know where you're going and it is raining, we'll send you an umbrella just in case.
Well, that's awesome.
What?
Tell him your actual example.
What?
'cause he's
What
giving,
examples?
Like a weather example, but tell him your actual.
Yeah.
Cultural?
Well, like
Yes.
you want to go hunting or.
Oh, yes.
Your actual real life example.
Real life examples. Okay. Let's see. So, with every destination that we're looking for, we're thinking first also like what is the weather? Also like what is the terrain? Like in Italy, there's like a lot of cobblestone streets and how to prepare for that. Also certain activities that might be popular. So we'll go ahead and help you pack for those particular things. I guess Tony's probably talking about Berlin. So when you're thinking about certain destinations, there might be, I don't know, a certain color palette or culturally how they naturally dress. Like with Berlin, it's definitely freedom of expression. And so people may think that, oh, when you're going out in Berlin and they have awesome nightlife, that you would totally like dress up in heels or maybe what you would wear to Vegas. Definitely not it.
Really?
It's basically what do you feel you're best in? And
Right.
if your best is a pair of chucks, a jeans, and a t-shirt, rock it, own it, and do it versus trying to be something else. So
I love that.
yeah,
That's
so
so
it's
dope.
like almost like those, we've done the research to help you, like even culturally what you may see there. So
That's dope.
Ooh.
That's something I would never have thought of to kind of do. You mentioned how like Berlin, right? I don't even know what the culture is like out there. So this is something that not only kind of like arranges clothing and shoes for you as a person based on your personal interest, but what maybe the culture is like out there and what's kind of like, I don't know, what people wear to something like that, like an event, like you said,
Yeah.
a nightclub or something.
if we see that it is a necessary problem like to address that you may not know of, we will go ahead and
Because
tell you.
there are some countries where it's like you can't wear that color, right? What about something like
oh
that?
yeah. So if you think about
Is it
if you're
really?
taking
Yeah.
if you're taking a safari in like Kenya or any type
Cam-
of safari
right,
in
right.
Africa, you can't wear camouflage because it's a military thing that is like almost illegal. You cannot wear
I
any
did not know
camouflage.
Never knew that.
Yeah, so don't wear any type of like camouflage. In the States, everyone kind of wears camouflage.
It's more of a fashion thing.
Yeah, do not wear
No matter
that.
what it is.
Don't wear that in
Oh,
Africa.
that's
Yeah, so
You
there's
want to
certain-
blend in Vegas versus some Supreme t-shirts.
Exactly. And so like if you're going
high
into
heels.
maybe like a basilica or a church in Italy or, one of those Catholic places, you have to make sure you cover your shoulders and so forth. So
Right.
those are things that we're also letting people know that they may not be aware of because we want to make sure, again, that they like pack confidently for whatever they're doing there.
Now, is this whole service using the Zappos based customer service employees, or is this kind of like its own thing, or is it intertwined? How does that whole thing work?
That's a very good question. So we recently went live, so we're working through a lot of things. Right now, when you go to the site, you'll see content already there populated with different destinations. We'll be adding destinations weekly. But at any time, regardless, you could always contact our customer loyalty team or customer loyalty at Zappos, and they would be happy to help you. Eventually, I can see that we would have dedicated people directly for like travel and those fabrics. But right now, we're slowly growing our team because we are technically a startup within the larger Zappos ecosystem.
Oh, nice.
So dope.
Dang, Tony?
But this is awesome. That what I love about Zappos is that whatever, again, that intersection of like whatever you're passionate about,
right,
your skills and what's needed, that there's an opportunity for that. And so I think I've been very fortunate in almost the past 15 years to be able to follow my passions throughout Zappos. So I'm very fortunate to be a part of this company.
That's awesome. And clearly you're passionate and it shows in what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know?
Okay.
So thank you for joining us, Beverly.
We love it.
All right.
I wish we would have known Beverly was coming. We would have prepared more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have her on a separate name.
There we go.
Thank you guys. You guys are awesome, and thank you for making me feel comfortable.
Of course.
Very much
problem.
so.
Thank you for getting on.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody who's tuning in. We'll catch you guys in the next morning dinner.
Every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen. In the goddamn refrigerator.
I sure am hungry.
Thank you guys for watching that episode of the Morning Dinner Podcast with Tony Hsieh. And you stuck it all the way through. You made it to the outro. Shout out to you.
Thank you.
Before we conclude this week's episode, don't forget to
smash that like button
and
subscribe and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know who you maybe want on the show next.
But you know
That'd
what?
be cool.
That should be your decision. You shouldn't wait for us to tell you, because you should want to smash that like button. But please, it's my birthday at the end of the year, so smash that like button. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys in the next morning dinner.